Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching or listening to this, and welcome to Parkview Radio. Today we're joined by, he's played a spaceman, he's played a policeman, and he's played various roles in musical theatres and panto. He's also the first civilian recipient of a Police Bravery Award, and he's also an OBE. It's Mr. Graham Cole. Welcome to the show, Graham.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, in following Lee's footsteps. Whenever you're watching us, great to be with you.
Thank you for joining us. Before we start, I'll have to let you know that this interview is being recorded. You have the right to remain silent, but anything you say will be used in social media. You have the right to an agent. If you deny an agent, then an agent will be provided for you. Do you understand?
Yeah, very well done, Lee.
So, Graham, before we get into your very long career, how's lockdown been treating you? Is everyone safe and well your end?
Yeah, we are, thank you. I have to look after my wife. She's had pneumonia 3 times.
Wow.
So for the first lockdown, she didn't go outside for 11 weeks. So we just have to be very careful. But yeah, it's okay. I mean, you just have to be sensible, know what you're doing. We always have our masks with us. We always wash our hands all the time. We've always got the gels in all the cars. I think you just have to be sensible. And, it's going to be our life for a while, isn't it, Lee?
It's just weird how the world's changed that. It used to be what you wearing to go out on Friday night. Now it's what mask are you taking out?
I got some very special ones. So I have ones that are sent to me, which has the police logo on one side and SO595 on the other.
Oh, wicked.
I did say, well, I like wearing masks. It's not many people recognise you, although some still do, remarkably, over the top of the mask. They recognise the eyes. And obviously, if I speak, they recognise the voice.
Yeah.
But I quite like wearing the mask, actually, because you can walk past people, they don't know who you are. It's quite fun.
So I bet it's really hard as well, because in your profession, obviously, theatre work, it's panto season, TV, all that shut down. I bet you're climbing the walls at the moment, itching to do some work.
We did our last production last Christmas, and that's right across the country. We shut down in March, as you know.
Yep.
And unfortunately, I won't get political about it, but unfortunately, my industry is just being hung out to dry. There's no money for any of the comics or the technicians or the musicians. There's no money at all for any of us. We can't get furloughed because we're self-employed.
Exactly.
And lots of youngsters are going into the West End doing their first dancing job, their first singing job. They've taken digs. They've had to pay for those digs. They're now not being paid. It's absolutely horrendous. And you're right. Panto season's coming up, and that's not going to happen, I don't think. It's as much to do with the numbers that we have backstage as it is the audiences, because most theatres, and I've been part of a theatre forum talking about how we can get theatres open for quite a few months. And the theatres are doing fantastic jobs, one way in, one way out. The bars will remain open throughout the production, so you can go and get your drinks and take them back to the auditoriums. There's all sorts of plans in place, and they're very, very safe places to go. But it's more to do with the technicians. I mean, if you do those big, as you know, I've done West End musicals, you do those, there could be 30, 40 of us in the cast, 22 musicians, and probably another 20 technicians.
So looking at 100 people in a close vicinity. Yeah.
And that is the problem. And of course, we all go home, we all travel. That's one of the toughest things in London, of course, is you travel on public transport. I think this pandemic, if anything, has maybe proved to us, look, we all need each other.
Exactly. And it shows as well, like with the NHS workers and the supermarket staff and the bin men, it's actually the jobs that people don't really want or don't see as a good job is the jobs that keep the country together. It doesn't matter if you're working high up in an office, putting numbers into a computer. It's been on cleaning the streets.
Well, can I turn the question on its head then, Lee? How are your students coping with lockdown? How difficult is it for you? Because obviously that's social.
We stayed open. We managed to get 10 students in a day, and with a skeleton staff of 7, and then we remote taught across the lockdown. So we used stuff like Google Classroom. I know. See, technology is a very up and down thing, because we moan about young people being on their computer games all the time and all that, but we're meeting up today. This wouldn't have been able to happen. We managed to keep the education going throughout the lockdown. That wouldn't have been able to happen without 10.
Well, I think also, as we experienced, as we tried to do this last week, as we experienced also, everyone's working from home, as indeed my daughter is. So the pressures on technology and on certainly BT and all those are the providers, because our whole system went down. As you know, we were trying to talk.
Exactly.
We lost everything. So I think as well we need to be aware of that, don't we? But are your students, are okay at home? I mean, it's very difficult, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because
we opened up fully at the start of September. So we've got hand sanitizer stations across the building, one at a time on entering. Wash hands after every lesson. We wipe down the classrooms after every lesson. We're keeping the students in bubbles and their key stages. We're not allowed to do assembly, so we do assemblies virtually. So everyone logs on to the computer on the white screen in the classroom, and then whoever's taking assemblies in another room. And it's really weird because you could be one classroom apart, but because you're on the computer doing a virtual assembly, like literally miles apart. So
are the students fearful of the hand washing and all that sort of thing?
no, they've actually took really well to it, and like we've got younger students, we've got primary level, and we've got older students, and it's trying to teach the social distancing, and remarkably, they've took really well to it, and there's been no complaints, no moaning, and
I have great trouble because I'm a hugger.
Yeah.
So I have real trouble not. It took me weeks not to shake hands because our industry is very social, isn't it? You know, that's the whole thing about it. As you mentioned, you know, I've been at it a long time, 45, 46 years, and the biggest thing is knowing mates and working with mates, and it's very difficult when you can't do that socializing bit before it. You know, rehearsals are really important because that's how we work out how we want to do it. Shows like The Bill could still be made because obviously we were on the streets. I never went anywhere near a studio. I went there to get changed and then I went out again. I was never anywhere. I was always on the streets. So I guess we could still do stamp on the streets.
Yeah. Just patrolling the empty high streets.
But I mean, theatres are really trying. Producers are really trying to put things together. Andrew Lloyd Webber's really trying to get the West End up and running. But then it's everything associated with that. You know, it's the travel and it's just so difficult. And numbers, if you're not working at about 70%, you're not going to make any money. My wife, you know, is the one to talk to about being in lockdown because she's only happy when I'm working. She said I'm the most miserable thing around to be anywhere near if my brain isn't filled with scripts or doing something. So I think there's that element attached to it as well. And of course, you know, the biggest worry for all of us, including myself, is, you know, I've not earned anything since last March, and I've no idea when I'm going to earn anything again.
Exactly.
And that is true of comics and you know, musicians. It's really, really tough. Really tough.
I bet it is. Right, so let's get into your career. So before we talk about your career, what school did you go to? Where did you grow up?
I was actually born in North London, in Willesden, where we used to film The Bill when I first joined it, believe it or not.
Okay.
Like, going back home for me. We then moved, or Dad moved us to Harlow in Essex. So that's where I was educated at Burnt Mill, one of the very first comprehensive schools in the country. It was fantastic. I loved every minute of it. I spent my life, because the back of my house was all farmland. So I worked on the farms from 10, 11, 12, up until 20. I only ever wanted to be an actor. I used to go to Saturday morning cinema to watch great movies, John Wayne, Humphrey Bogart, and things like that, plus lots of B movies, which would have been the British movies, which I loved, quite a lot of them were war movies, but I still quite loved them anyway. And then I joined the health service because I only wanted to be an actor, but my dad wanted me to do something sensible, so I trained in orthopedics. So if you break your arm or your leg, Lee, I'm your man.
Okay, we'll call you up.
And I did that, and when I was 21 or thereabouts, I said, can I now go? And I went off and red-coated, and that was in 1974, and I've been doing this wonderful, crazy, stupid, life-filling job ever since.
And what type of student was you at school? Was you
naughty,
called a nerd?
Very naughty, yeah.
Okay. Did you have any favourite subject?
I loved English and sport.
Okay, what was your sport?
My two things. And if you played, I played rugby, I played tennis, and then on sports days like shot put and throwing cricket balls and stuff like that, you had to do at distances. I could do all that. And then, strangely enough, because I've always been quite a big old lump, I could do the hurdling, which I quite liked. But I really wasn't a runner as such. I found that quite dull and boring after a while.
And then you got a job on the TV, so we had to run everywhere.
Yeah, they didn't tell you that at the audition, mate.
Is that why Tony Stamp was an aerial driver, so he didn't have to?
He was, yeah. He's supposed to be behind the wheel of a car. He's not supposed to be doing all that stuff. But obviously, that role was something that came in 1984 for me.
With your acting career, then, did you go into theatre and musical first, or because I know you got into Doctor Who before the bill, didn't you? So
yeah. Well, when I was a student, I've got an irritation. Something is annoying me. I think my wife is probably trying to give me something.
Yeah.
Get me out of the house. And it's aggravated my neck for some other reason. So I keep rubbing it. I don't know why.
You tried a bit of itching powder in your collar before you started.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. She watches too many of them Agatha Christie's.
Yeah.
But at school, I did loads and loads of plays and musical stuff, and I was in bands and groups. Just wanted to perform, really, from a very young age. The only instrument I play are the drums, but there you go. So going into as a redcoat and stuff, I then went into theatre, musical theatre. I'm very lucky that I've got a God-given voice. I didn't go to drama school because I've been in medical school.
Right, okay. Yeah.
For a bit years, so I certainly didn't want to go back and start learning again. And I don't think there's anything tougher than medicine.
No,
I mean, law is pretty difficult, but medicine isn't. Yeah. So I didn't really want to do that again. And on my way around the country when I was doing musicals, I would ask the theatre administrators at the time if, and we had repertory theatres going there, so you could go and do lots of work there, which I did. I could do plays, I could do musicals, I could stay for 2 months, 3 months at the one theatre because I could cross over into all the different spheres. And in my 12 years of doing that, I don't know, 60 odd characters or something I would have played in that time. And it sort of gets you ready for the job, which is, it's television a little bit different now, film's a little bit different now. But I'm a character actor. I like getting hold of the characters and finding out about them. And because one of the big things that journalists always said, "Do you want to be a policeman?" No, if I wanted to be a policeman, I'd be a policeman.
Join the police, yeah, exactly. How did Doctor Who come about?
I think because in the 70s, the BBC liked to have a group of actors. So we would be called in to do Shakespeare's or whatever in the background of all their shows. But in theatre, I was well known in not only in panto, but summer seasons. I worked for Delphont and Grade for a long time, and I would feed the comics. So I sort of got to be known as being someone that could do comedy. So Kenny Everett show, I worked with Kenny Everett lots. Kelly Monteith, when he was over here, worked with him. And of course, everybody that you work with in theatre backstage all have a career as well. So many that you work with that maybe start off as ASMs, assistant stage managers or something like that, go to be producers at the BBC or ITV or wherever, and they remember you, and we all had fun together, so they give you a ring, and that's sort of how it works. There's a lot of nonsense spoken about my job. The big thing is knowing your lines, knowing the character, going in, getting to know the director, what do you want, where do you want it, how do you want it, and doing it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, time and money, eh?
Well, yeah, it is, but it's also fun. The thing that I would say to anyone that wants to go into the profession, you're playing cowboys and Indians for a living.
Yeah.
You're changing moods. You're having to get to know yourself extraordinarily well in order to take on the mantra of somebody else.
Yeah.
And that can be quite difficult. If the role is demanding, it can be very, very difficult.
A lot of actors, I know, it sounds a bit depressing, but they like acting to get away from themselves. Is that the same case for you, or because you're being someone else for months?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Lee. I think you have to be a bit schizophrenic to want to do the job, and I think maybe with certainly a play, you get to know your audience quite well because we're looking in their eyes as much as they're looking into ours.
Yeah.
Television, of course, it's a different technique, but you hope that you are going to maybe leave something with the character. Maybe you think, policeman, but maybe Tony Stamp can show you that more. Maybe it's not quite as easy as you think it is.
Exactly.
So you've always got those little moments, hopefully, that you share. And Doctor Who came about because somebody I'd worked with in theatre said, "I'll get him. He's a good bloke," And strangely enough, I don't mind being encased in rubber.
No, exactly.
And you have to not worry about that if you're going to be a Cyberman or a Marshman or Melker. And very often, Lee, what is lovely is that I will go and meet the designer at quite an early stage, and start talking about the characters. Remember when I first played a Cyberman, the technicians would have to draw the line of the shooting of the gun. We didn't have all these wonderful techniques that they had nowadays. So we'd have to be very, very precise where we were pointing it and who we were pointing it at. And, you know, at the time on television, you couldn't point the gun at a camera.
Right, okay.
Because it was seen to be aggressive toward your audience. So you'd have to learn, you'd have to learn ways of holding the gun and shooting the gun in set ways. I've been associated with Childline for 34 years or something. And yeah, you do see those trends. And certainly in lockdown, we're getting a lot more calls from kids that are in a lot of trouble because they're just spending 24/7 on these ruddy machines.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about the emotions, you know, the bullying that goes on these mobile phones is horrific.
Terrible, yeah.
Caring so much about who's on Facebook. Who cares? You know,
exactly.
Go and talk to someone and get
go out and climb a tree or something like.
I think what you said was very poignant. You know that technology is a wonderful thing, but it also is massively misused.
How did the bill come about then? And was it meant to be a long-term gig or? No,
not at all. The bill came about. Julian Oldfield was the casting director. I'd always done a lot of stage fighting. If I didn't know how to do something, Lee, the fun for me is going and finding out how to do it.
Yeah.
And I think the advice to anyone that wants to join my profession hasn't really changed that much, although techniques, everything has. And that is that if you can give your producers and directors as many talents as you can, then it makes their job a heck of a lot easier. Yeah. So I learned to stage fight. I learned how to fight with swords and all that sort of stuff. And so I was doing that, and Julian Olver said, we need an actor to come and do some fight sequences, but he needs to be an actor as opposed to a stuntman or anything like that, because we just need him to do set things at set times or what have you. So that was my in, really, and they liked me. What happened then was just luck, and we all need that element of. Yeah. But the bill was then being looked at about going, because we were only doing hour-longs at the time, about eight a year or something like that. And the rest of the year we were back into theatre doing our stuff. And then they were going to split the bill. So they wanted someone, and they just said to me, well, can you come in and we just want tests really to see what we can do with the cameras. One of the cameramen knew that I had a racing license, which I held for over 50 years. So I know cars, and I love motor cars, and I love going fast. And again, I like the difficulty of doing car shots. They are very, very complicated.
I bet they are.
Not only with where you're going and how you're doing that, but with the cameras, with the mics, with the lights. It's all really, really technical. And I loved all that side of it. We were using the equipment that you would use on the news, which isn't usually used for drama. So it was.
And you used documentary equipment like handheld cameras, weren't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Never done it at the time.
And that's exactly what we were, a drama documentary. I think it's also the bill's downfall is we never won any awards because nobody knew quite what we were.
Exactly.
Whether we were real or not, you kind of go, no.
What category?
Yeah. But anyway, we always used to get in the dramas, sort of, we always used to be put up against golf or something like that. I don't understand why. Because I wasn't hoping in hell that we're going to win up against anything like that. But anyway, even when I was doing Doctor Who, you know, I'd be sat in the corner as a Marshman or whatever. Or a Cyberman with the helmet taken off, because that was held on with 4 screws. So once you screwed in it, that was it. We had a little mesh where our mouth was, and they shove a straw through so you could suck a drink, keep hydrated. If a managing director doesn't know the cleaner, doesn't know his post guys that work in the post, doesn't know the secretaries, then he shouldn't be in that place, should he?
No, exactly. Everyone's part of the cog. It's not just about the actors, or it's not just about the director, or.
Yeah.
If you haven't got the person there adjusting the lights, then you ain't going to have a show either. So,
you know, a program like The Bill, we had 400 behind us.
Wow.
You know, that'd be four different crews with directors and assistants and cameramen, lighting men, and all that stuff. But also in the script department, you know, script editors, producers, online producers. And they all were absolutely vital to making it work. And their whole job, you know, if you really think about it, everything, whether it's the words, the cameras, everything is geared to make our lives as easy as they possibly can.
Yeah,
and that's huge, isn't it? And you have to pay that back.
No, exactly. No, totally agree. With a character like Tony Stamp, he had police experience before he turned up at Sun Hill. Did you give him a
Supposedly.
Did you give him a backstory in your head before you played him, or did you just let the script writers develop as well? Or
What was quite interesting and unfortunate for me was having done so many reps, Agatha Christie's and Durbridge's and Neil Simon, who I adored. You get into finding characters and walks, because I said to you, you know, I could do four Agatha Christie's and the Durbridge play in repertory with each other, and in a week you could see 4 plays. And we'd be swapping between all those plays. So, you know, you would try to give your audience something, a different walk or a different stance or a different voice or whatever. So going to Tony Stamp, I approached it exactly the same way. My biggest thing when they finally said, yeah, we want Stamp, because I was given other numbers, you know, I was sort of any old PC you could wish for, until they decided that. And as soon as they decided that, Lee, I need to know about policing. So I had never played a policeman before that. So I went off, and the Metropolitan Police were wonderful to me. In my 25 years on the show, I went out with the guys in their area cars right up until the time that I left the show, just sitting in the back with them, and what happens. So you actually see that very rarely did I get a story where I hadn't been there for real.
Wow.
With the guys.
Wow.
And also, you know, you can also go to the script department and give them some ideas maybe of things that you experienced or you saw. But more than that, you know, with the gear and all that, my job, I thought, was to put a heart inside a police uniform.
Yeah, exactly. Tony was very unlucky in love. I know he had a couple of rendezvous, but he never settled down. Why do you think that was? Do you think he was married to the job, or?
Yeah, I really loved that aspect of Tony Stamp. I really, really did. I met Cherry on my first job as a redcoat. She was 16 and I was 20, and we've been together ever since. So I know what that's like. I know what it's like to go home and be a dad. I've got 2 children, now in their 30s, but I knew what that was like. And I love the fact that Tony wasn't. I love the fact that he was so unlucky in love, because the next day I'd go shopping with Cherry in Marks and Spencer's or somewhere, and old ladies would be coming up and giving me a cuddle, and my missus would look at me and go, I'll see you in the car in 20 minutes.
Yeah. I remember when you going about what you said earlier on about putting a heart into the character. I remember a scene with Polly when Tony was trying to. He thought that Polly was giving him the signals, and when he got turned down, you really felt for Tony. So, as you said, it weren't just about being a policeman. The bill also brought life to the police. It showed the police in a human way.
Yeah, I do think that policing and acting is quite similar, in the sense that, you know, the guys and the girls have to change mode and approach every job that they go into. The problem that they really have now is they don't have any downtime. The same as the paramedics. They're just going from job to job to job, and you do need time to recover. Yeah, I like the. You know, I don't want to play me.
Yeah,
you know, that's really boring. And one of the interesting things is that an exec producer came to me once and said, you know, you never come in and say Tony wouldn't say or do that. You know, you're one of the few actors. And well, I wouldn't know that, would I? Because I'm not him.
Exactly.
But also, the absolute fun is picking up that, seeing how difficult that story is, and making it Tony Stamp.
Yeah. And what do you think Tony would be up to now, 11 years on?
Well,
tired or?
Probably he would be doing something. I know a lot of coppers that were training when I was with them in the area cars and that sort of stuff, and they went on and became inspectors, commanders, commissioners, all sorts of things. And when they leave, they go into security, into all sorts of other aspects, still working within the community. Some go back and work within the Met, delivering summonses and stuff like that. Some go private, you know, into the private detective work and that sort of thing. So I think there's lots of scope for him. I mean, he would have to do something like that, because the poor old soul, he hasn't got anything else.
Exactly. Wouldn't be surprised walking down your local Asda's and see Tony standing in the corner behind the desk, watching the cameras.
What do you think Stamp would have in his house? Not very much.
Yeah.
He had a bit of memorabilia about his dad, because his dad was a regimental. In my head, I made that up, and then they brought the dad back and made him exactly that. played by John Woodvine beautifully. But I made all my head. My dad was a regiment sergeant major. We spent our entire lives, me and my sister, going around the world, and that's why he really never made friends as such. He had lots of workmates, but never really did, because he never had to or could. And I like that aspect of it as well. So going back to the house, it was really, really important for me that the house should be in darkness, which our lighting director was so against, because obviously wanted a bit of atmosphere in the window and things. But I said it should be in darkness. The guy lives on his own.
Yeah.
When he opens the door, it should be like nothing. And when he goes in, he's got a really good television, really good microwave, comfortable settee, a nice bed, and that's about it. And a bit of memorabilia up the wall. And bless them, that's exactly what they did. And the art department on the bill was extraordinary, because you would run in the house as we would, with the only television program about the police that didn't show you the crime. You arrived when we arrived, so you saw. And so as the police have to do, you kind of look at the mouthy one, look at the one that's looks as though they're agitated or whatever it is. But in a house, you run in the house and you have a look around. Is it scruffy? Is it clean? Is it nice? Is it and all that stuff is in your head, so you're gearing yourself up what's going to happen. And I love that aspect of the bill. I thought that absolute precision and care was extraordinary, which is why it lasted as long as it did.
Yeah, and with Tony leaving, was that a mutual decision, or did they say, sorry, Tony's run his course, or because you left a year before the bill finished, didn't you?
They thought that the bill needed a revamp, but it changed continually.
Yeah, it was very good at revamping.
My 25 years there, and I was very fortunate in most instances that they chose Tony to change, or a stamp story to change the sort of working system. No, they thought he needed to be younger and more sexy or whatever it was. I wasn't young and I wasn't sexy, so I guess that's why you're in
any company, people move on, new people come in, don't they?
I thought the saddest thing was when it actually did come to an end.
Did you like the final scene, like that it ended just on a normal day after a big high-profile storyline, and then you just see the cast getting on, going down the pub or whatever? Did you like that they ended it like that, or did you want a big explosion?
Well, I think ITV in their wisdom were thinking of maybe you could bring it back at some point. I don't think, in all honesty, and I'm not saying it because I wouldn't be part of it.
Yeah.
I just think it would be very, very difficult. I think you could do where Stamp and somebody like that is back at Sun Hill and you sort of meet the coppers, because he is doing community work. He is doing community work or something like that. Yeah. And so, but I think to actually do what the police do now, it's a very, very, very different profession.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that you could, the bill at the time was an education. We really did get the equipment before the other coppers did. Before the coppers the real coppers got it, we'd have asps and sprays and all sorts of things.
Did you have to do specialised training? Because obviously the new equipment was coming in. So did you have a day's training of how to use the sprays and?
Yeah, and as actors joined the show, they would have to go off and sort of have a chat to policemen, but also do the training with the cuffs, and as much to not hurt your guest artists as much as anything else, because obviously they're being cuffed, and it does hurt to be handcuffed. It's not easy. And if anyone ever looks at policemen, why does it take 4 of them? If you've got someone that's either alcohol or drug induced, it will take a person on every limb, one on one leg, one on the other leg, one on each arm, to get the handcuffs on. I started, along with a couple of mates, a new charity called Post Traumatic Stress 999, which is just for the blue lighters.
Oh, that's really
and
good.
That's for support, but we're online talking to them. We do a lot of seminars. We go out, we talk to coppers. Quite a lot of them say, what the hell do you? I mean, they like the fact that Tony Stamp is there. I have to say, I'm very lucky from that point of view. I will also take a fair amount of stick from them about various storylines. But then again, I'm able to say, acting is just stress. It isn't anything else. It is just stress. You're learning lines, you're hitting marks, you're playing characters. If Wednesday your character has to cry, you start gearing yourself up on Monday night. So when they shout action at you, you cry. That's the job. It's not complicated. It's not clever. It's just the job. That's what you have to do. But as you say, your family are aware that you're going through those stages, because obviously you do.
And what do you prefer? Do you prefer television work, or do you prefer theatre? Or is it the same on different levels?
The work is totally different, and your approach to it is totally different. And you need far more patience for TV and film than you do for theatre, because you're out there and you're doing it. You also have the ultimate power, because even if the director really wants you to do something, once you're on that stage, it's yours. And you manipulate your character along with the audience, because the audience becomes such a part of the show. Why do people go to live theatre? Because you will never see the same show twice.
So twice, exactly.
You won't, because we'll forget lines in different places. We'll have all sorts of things happening. But TV again, and film, you just reach millions. You know, the bill went to 36 countries. I've been to Australia 8 times with my family on the back of the bill. You know, it's huge.
Do you think the bill extending its episodes and going to the post watershed sort of helped kill it off? Do you think it tried to get a bit too gritty with?
Yeah, I think
towards the end.
It's very difficult, and people really should throw into the equation a lot more for ITV, or indeed any of the independents, because all their revenue is on advertising.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the big thing, because, you know, when the bill was at its height, anyone that sold any electrical products, cars, anything you use at the home, because our audience went from little kids to grannies, and you know, it was huge. So they would want to plug their goods in between part 1 and part 2. So, you know, the bill made lots and lots and lots of money. It was pretty expensive to make, I might say, because we're out on the street.
I bet it was.
But you know, it did make money. But yeah, I think it's also one of those strange things that when you've got a success, kind of, what do you do with it? In America, they will just run with it. In England, we always have a strange thing of wanting to change everything. And I remember talking to some execs once about it, and just saying, look, while it's working, you know, take the ball and just run. And just keep running, because at some point it will change, and it does for us all. You know, when you asked earlier about the contracts, you know, on the bill, and all actors, whether in all of the soaps, will be on 6 monthly contracts. And I was in 6 monthly contracts for 25 years. It's just whether you can stand the fact that every 6 months they could elbow you on a whim.
Talking about soaps, it seemed like the bill was a sort of stepping stone for people to jump over to EastEnders and that. Was you ever offered any part in a soap?
No,
would you do a soap?
I've never been offered EastEnders, and of course I'd go. It's one of the most watched programs and one of the best payers.
Because I know you now you have.
I've got to provide for my family still.
No, exactly. Scott Mason now, who's still in it, and then I can't remember her name. I know the character name, Denise Fox. She was in the bill. Then we had the lady who played Jean Gold. She was in EastEnders.
Went the other way.
Loads and loads of people. I bet when I had the dog was a police dog before on the bill before we went to EastEnders.
I've been up to Coronation Street a couple of times. I've been up there once. Only about 4 or 5 years ago. I was doing pantomime in Wolverhampton, and had to go up. We didn't work on Mondays because we did 2 shows on Sunday, and I went up and auditioned there, and I was quite saddened that I didn't get that part. They went for a more comic feel. But I mean, you just want to act, don't you? You know, the movies and stuff. I love making movies. I haven't made very many. But again, in this country, see, in America, you spread around, and they let you sort of split around. Again, here it's very difficult, because if you do theatre, you tend to be ignored for television and film. And if you work film, you don't do TV, and you don't do. It's really weird, the layers here. Because
you was 25 years on the bill, do you feel like you're typecast as a policeman, serious security, or?
No, not at all. No,
when it comes to TV work, I know theatre work, you play different characters, and theatre's a bit different. But when it comes to TV roles, do you feel typecast?
I think it's more in people's heads than in ours. You would hope that those in my profession that run my profession would understand, of course, that we just play the characters.
Exactly.
I think it is different. I think it's different now. I think, if I may be allowed to say that, reality television has crucified my industry. But again, I think in EastEnders, you can show things. Your industry can be shown by people, with bipolar and with other things that can be brought in on the character.
Yeah.
As long as they talk to the people that have got it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And write it correctly and don't sort of take it off into the mystical world. The problem you have, as indeed on the bill or anything else, is how you portray it, because you've got to try and find some kind of drama.
Yeah.
And so that's what's quite difficult sometimes. Where
trying to keep as close to reality as you can, but adding excitement at the same time. It's a very
I did one flew over the cuckoo's nest on stage.
Wow.
And it was in the round, and it was amazing because you actually saw the audience getting quite affected by I grew a beard, and he was always picking at his beard all the time, and you get very, very close to your audience, and you can actually see people quite sort of like joining you, picking their faces. But that's part of my job.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And you come off and you think, okay, we got them. We influenced them, and that's, you kind of hope is the job, and that's what you hope you pass on.
Was there any area of the bill with storylines they touched that you thought they took a bit too far, or was it done correctly? But do you think it ever went too far, or like with the corrupt cops and all that, when you had Don Beach and all that, it was a bit?
Yeah, I think it's what is very difficult is obviously that again is drama.
Yeah.
The only thing I thought was a little bit difficult, and you had to really sort of step back a little bit, was how come none of us noticed? Nick Klein was on that decline with his drug taking and stuff, and none of us noticed. You've got a whole station full of people that are trained to notice that sort of thing.
But again, I think it goes back to what you were saying, like in real life, when you go to work, you hear about stories but you don't actually meet people outside of work. So that because
I thought stuff like Carver's alcoholism, I thought was handled beautifully.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Well written and fantastically acted by Mark Wingett,
Yeah.
And I think stuff like that is really, really, really important. And the fact, that Tony Stamp never had a girlfriend. There was an episode once, where he was nicking everything in sight. He had this long-term nurse as his girlfriend, Julie. And in the end, sort of Cryer gets him up against the wall and sort of, what the hell's wrong with you? And Trudy Ackland was there, and he just said, well, I asked her to marry me last night. And she said no. And so the next day, he just nicked everybody in sight, taking out his frustration.
Frustration on the public.
So I think there's elements of that. Yeah, I think there's elements of that you can.
Yeah.
And the typecasting bit is quite difficult because the thing about it is playing Tony Stamp for that long also gave me 36 pantomimes.
Yeah. Because
people know who I am and they come in. My job then, Lee, is to show them, well, I ain't Tony Stamp.
No, exactly.
I used to play the villain.
Yeah. It's like last year we saw Peter Pan and Steve McFadden as Captain Dashes. And again,
that's a great role.
Yeah, even though he plays villainous in EastEnders, he was still so far away from Phil Mitchell that you forgot he was watching him. It was like...
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't that
and
great?
That's the best thing about Panto, as you said. You can see, have an image of someone in your head. Go and watch. I think last year it was Aladdin with Martin Pellow, and he played Jafar. And it was completely crazy to see this sinner as a villain. And that's what I love about the pantomime.
Absolutely.
You've got these preconception
ideas. Roles.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I love playing villain. I love playing villain because Tony Stamp was pretty much an all right
edge.
Yeah. I like playing it because people aren't expecting you to get the kids booing, and my God, do they boo me.
That's when you know you do your role perfectly well, isn't it, about the boos?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it used to upset my daughter tremendously, who also is a trained actor. It used to upset her tremendously when she was younger because on my walk down, of course, I'd still be getting booed where everybody else got cheered. and that's one of the things, Lee, when you talk about the emotions of it all, you've got to be ready for that. If you want to be a baddie, you're a baddie.
Exactly, you've got to take it.
Yeah. And if you aren't a baddie, if you aren't a baddie, nobody else has got anything to play off.
Exactly. You need every good hero needs a good baddie. It's classic in that story of good versus evil.
Yeah.
How did the police
where would
bravery?
Bond be?
Sorry, how did the police bravery award come about? Are you the only civilian, or was you the first?
What it actually is it wasn't, sorry to correct, but it wasn't a police bravery award.
Oh, okay.
I'm the first member of NAPO,
Okay.
which is the National Association of Retired Police Officers.
Oh, okay. Apologies.
and you get that if you've been a serving police officer, but also if you'd won gallantry awards, Queen's medals, commissioners' commendations. So I was, and I think probably still am, the only civilian member. And I go to the meetings and I get barracked and shouted at, quite rightly, because I wasn't a real one. But I'm able to bring something to it, I hope. And it's just a huge honour. I think it's amazing. But that was the job, getting out there, researching it, and playing it as truly as I possibly could.
Exactly. And the OBE, how did that come about? And was that special?
Yeah, that's oh man, that's extraordinary. It comes in a brown envelope.
Yes.
And my missus, and I've already mentioned my car driving.
Yeah.
My missus said, "You've got another speeding ticket." In the old days, when the police would stop you and talk to you about doing that sort of thing, doesn't happen too much now. I would always say to them, "When it's your fault, you trained me."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, oh man, it came about because of the charity stuff. But we've always mentioned it. You care enough to get this organisation up and running, and it takes over your life, and your missus is shouting at you because you're missing a birthday, or you're not at some event they'd rather you be at. And the charity stuff comes back because I've had a charmed life. It's been very difficult for Cherry and for the family to live the life. Much easier for you that are doing the job, living the life. I've always said to him, doing the job's wonderful, living the life is a complete pain in the bum.
I bet it is.
It's when you read the letter, it comes from Buckingham Palace on behalf of the Queen, and it's the Prime Minister that writes to you, and you kind of go, blimey. It came about from a police officer that I've done load of charity stuff with over the years, and you only do it. And you must get the same thing, Lee. Whatever event you do, you get so much more back. And the other thing to me is, people often say to you about, well, how do you find the time? Well, time management is the biggest thing, isn't it? It's being able to just maybe now it's more psychological. I do a lot of I do 20 minutes of yoga and relaxation every night. I get rid of all the negatives in my head, because if you go to sleep and you keep the negatives, that is what your subconscious will play on for the whole of your sleep.
Yeah.
So you'll wake up as drained, as maybe more so sometimes. Yeah. So it's really important to get rid of that. But I've learned that over the years. I've learned that. When I was at school, everyone was doing Hadrian's Wall or whatever to get their final mark, for the GCSEs. I did hypnosis. So I've always been a little bit different to everybody else.
Yeah.
Also, I like the fact that who the hell was going to mark it?
Exactly. No, that's very good. That's very, very true.
But the OBE is a huge honour, and what it does for the charities is it opens doors for us.
Exactly. Yeah, must do, which is a great help to what you would achieve. So, finally, before we wrap up, I know you've touched on it throughout the interview, but what advice would you give to young people wanting to go in your field and your industry?
It's very, very difficult, and with this pandemic, damn near impossible.
Yeah.
We've got, I don't know what it is, 240,000 come out of drama school every year. I was very lucky in my youth. My daughter also says she wished that theatre was as it was when I was young, in the sense of every major city had its own repertory theatre. Long gone. Where do you do the training? Where do you learn the techniques?
Exactly.
There's an element of playing yourself on television now, but that can get a bit dull. There's some actors you just see, I'm not going to bother watching that, I know it's going to be like.
Yeah.
And that's not why we join. That's not why we do it. Musical theatre still, if we ever get the theatres back, is the most joyful, magical experience of your life. through rehearsals, but then into the show, going into the dressing room an hour and a half before the show, doing a vocal and physical warm-ups, getting to know each other, and then in the dressing room getting the makeup on and listening to the orchestra tune in, and then the audience coming in, and then going out with those lights. There is nothing like it. It's extraordinary. But to look at an audience, the Dominion Theatre, when I did White Christmas playing General Waverley, 2,500 were in that theatre. Wow. Every time you play, and looking at the faces is the job. I remember once coming off, and because I worked with so many comics, and an actor, very well-known actor, once saying to me, "What are you doing?" "What do you mean?" "Well, I was looking at you and you were looking at the audience." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, for God's sake, I never look at the audience." And I'm, "Well, if you don't look at the audience, how do you know it's working?"
And how's the connection?
Like people say to me, "Lee, do you watch yourself on television?" "Yeah, well, of course I do. Because you're trying stuff all the time. And if you don't look at yourself, how do you know whether it works or not?"
Exactly.
And plus we've all got an ego. I'm not too sure that people say, "Oh, I can't possibly look at myself," whether that's actually true.
No, exactly.
But for young people, the most important thing, whether you're in my profession or any other, know what you want to do, be true to yourself, believe that within you are stronger and more equipped than you think you are. Do not ever let a teacher, an educationalist, your mum, your dad, or anybody else say you can't do that or you shouldn't do that, other than if it's going to injure you.
Did it say?
Certainly, from the point of view of what you can achieve, that's up to you.
Yeah.
I meet young people all the time, and one of the worst things is when you hear that someone's really put them down, and you try and say, "Don't let that happen." And then the saddest of all is the other end of the spectrum, where you meet someone that's really old and said, "I wish I'd."
Yeah.
That's probably the saddest, isn't it? The saddest you could ever hear from another human being. "I wish I'd." Well, why the hell didn't you?
Well, I'm going to wrap up the interview here. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been
let's wrap up on something happy.
Yep. Do you want to give us a quick song quickly? Or?
No, not on this money.
Okay. But hopefully once everything's settled down and you get us a bit of free time, that you'll be able to come and visit us in Reading, fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. Bless you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Good luck to you. Good luck to what you're trying to do and what you are doing and what you are achieving. To all your pupils, and particularly those that like Tony Stamford-the-Bill, thank you very much. Keep watching us. I like to see myself with black hair.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Graham, and hopefully we'll speak to you soon. Take care.
Bless you. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.